The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Tuesday webinar. This is Rebecca with WFIA. As we do every week, I'm going to leave everyone muted while our speaker talks. You can ask questions by typing them into the question panel or clicking the little hand raise button, but I will at some point go to unmute everyone, so if you can please make sure that your phone or your computer is muted on your end, that would be very helpful. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jan.
Good afternoon. This is Jan G., your President and CEO, and thank you so much for joining us today. I've missed the last two Tuesdays on vacation, and Tammy has led the webinars, and it sounds like there was all kinds of fun I missed last week, and she's brought a great speaker today to help us clear up the confusion that occurred. After we have our speaker in discussion on masks, then we'll do a very brief overview on unemployment insurance and COVID claims. And then we'll wrap it up unless you have other things to discuss. So I'm going to turn it over to Tammy Hector, our Vice President.
Thank you, Jan, and good afternoon, everyone. I wanted to follow up from our discussion last week and some of the confusion that we had and lead into this by giving you a little background. So I reached out to Labor and Industries, and we have been assigned to have Craig Blackwood, who is the Deputy Assistant Director for DOSH, work with us to try to help develop some clear guidance on masks. Since our conversation last week, there's been more challenges and confusion on this. So Craig is here to hopefully clear some of that up and explain next steps and what he's working on and how he's going to coordinate with DOSH and compliance inspectors and everyone else, so we have all of this straightened out. So with that, Craig, I want to thank you for all the time you've spent with me working on this issue and kind of share with our members where you're at with this. So thank you.
Well, you're welcome. And just so y'all know, I'm the single point of contact, so Tammy and others don't have to talk to various people. So I'm not necessarily the one doing all the work, but I'm the one who's going to make sure you have a single point to get an answer back to the association, just to hopefully facilitate communication. So you only have one person to go to. And before I start on masks, I know Brian Sully was on your webinar, I believe, and he likely did this, but just in case there's new people, the first thing I'm sharing on all these webinars is that you're not alone as you go through this. We do have consultation services. It's a free service, confidential, and they are here to help employers. They'll help you on your traditional safety and health issues that you may have. And of course, with the new COVID challenges, they're also here to help on that as well. And it is challenging for all of us to keep up, so we do our best. But if you need somebody to come on site, maybe for a little extra help, they are available. So we have staff all over the state, so we can give you a contact list. And Tam, I don't know if I've ever shared with you the contact list for our managers, both compliance and consultation in the state, that shows what counties their staff cover. But if you find that helpful, I can forward that so you can share with your members. So if they want consultation, they'll know who to call, or if there's some kind of compliance activity and they want to talk with the manager in charge at that part of the state, they'll have that information handy as well. So just let me know if you'd like that.
Oh, yeah, definitely. We want to have that for the members, please.
Okay, I'll make a note of that. So now on the mask, I'll try not to talk too much. So if there's questions, that's really where a lot of the discussion comes from. But I will say, traditionally, when there's new rules come out, we have a long process where we get to have a dialogue with business, labor, and other stakeholders. So we get to identify the challenge points and answer the questions before there's a requirement put out. That changes in the current environment that rules are being put out and new requirements that don't go through the typical process in the past. And that is just to say, we're actually working fast our end as stuff comes out to try to answer the questions ourselves. And so a lot of this is a work in progress. And so something you may hear 1 week can change a little bit. And I know that's happened to the food industry because at one time there was essential workers and you're under the, those essential guidelines. And now we're under the little bit different, the phase process, and what county you're in different phases. And now we're in the, everybody needs to wear a mask. And if you're a place of business who has customers, there's an expectation that you have some enforcement responsibilities now. I know we have questions around that. So first, let me follow up on Brian's discussion last week. And Tammy, if I need to stop at any point, just let me know. If I need to stop to take questions, or if I said something that doesn't seem real clear.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, because I'm just talking. I can't see anybody or know what's up. It's always kind of odd talking to the computer. So to follow up on Brian's discussion last week, the first concern that was brought to us is it sounded like the message that got out was, and this is in regards to employees right now, not customers. So just to be clear, I'm talking about employees right now. If you have an employee with a medical condition who could not wear a mask, then the next step was to look at laying that person off and go on unemployment with the current COVID benefits. And so, again, I'm not sure exactly what was said, but that really isn't the message we want out. So first off, if somebody can't wear a mask and there are no reasonable accommodations, we'll talk a bit about that and where that work is, then you're having to lay them off, just like any other work where reasonable accommodations, you don't have work that a person can do. That is something that needs to be considered. But it kind of sounds to me like the discussions with Tammy that was given as kind of an only option or a first option, and that is a last option. What we want to do is work together to keep everyone safe, employees and customers, and also keep workers employed, because there's an economic impact if you have to lay people off, and other impacts too. So again, to be clear, it's an option on the table, but it is the last one to look at after everything else has been exhausted. And so one thing that had come up with a reasonable accommodation, working with COVID, this again is all new. So what does that even mean? And I know the Food Industry Association and Food State has really been working on this, and so we appreciate that. And things do change, and there's some frustration because of that, I'm sure. And so what we look at for reasonable accommodation as of today, and I'll talk about some of the potential changes coming up, is using a face shield only is not an acceptable substitute for a cloth face mask, because the idea is that tighter fitting face mask protects others from what we may exhale or expel from ourselves, and face shields don't do that. The other thing is, well, we could use a face shield and keep employees 6 feet apart, and that doesn't by itself work either, because if you're just 6 feet apart, the requirement for a cloth face covering is still there. So we can't have employees, as part of a reasonable accommodation, simply working in a situation where anybody else would be wearing a mask. And so we have to look at what else do we need. Is it a physical barrier? Is it more distance? Maybe it's instead of 6 feet, it's 15 feet. And again, it's to protect the people wearing a mask from the one who can't, because they're still breathing and expelling stuff in the work area. And so there is some work being done. I know a document had come out in conjunction with the governor's order last week that talked about some requirements in regards to customers and employees, and that is being updated in regards to both. And so hopefully later this week, and Tammy, I think we're on a call with the Retail Association, the governor's office later this week, maybe there'll be some more work on that. Right now it's a draft document being edited, but I know there's consideration for, if people can't wear a mask, maybe more social distancing is appropriate. And then of course the question is, what does that mean? And that's gonna figure that out. We're looking at another thing Tammy brought up was face shields that have the cloth coverings around the edges. And so that is one we're looking at. I just learned that the California Department of Health actually allows those for workers who can't wear face masks and be properly socially distanced. And we're trying to find out if Cal OSHA, the worker enforcement organization, California, is accepting that as well. Because it is a bit different for workers and customers, because workers are there all day, customers are kind of transient in and out throughout the day. So we're really hoping to do is find options that work to prevent disease transmission, that keep everybody safe and working. So that's the goal. When I say the last option is the layoff, I'd really like that to not even be an option at all. I'd really like us to have, how can we get to yes to keep people working if at all possible. And so let me stop there, Tammy, just before I get into some of the customer stuff and enforcement. So I'll just stop and see if there's any questions, or if you want me to just keep on rambling on.
Okay. Rebecca, do you want to put any questions in the question box?
Questions in the question box right now. I can go through and unmute folks. If anyone has a question right now, if they want to, we'll start with Jeff. Jeff has a question. Maybe. How about Kevin? Kevin Storman?
Yes.
Yes, I can hear you.
Hello? Sorry. So I just want to be clear. I think I understand, because we have an employee that won't wear a face mask, won't wear a shield, and can't really do other jobs in the store. And there's no way to separate her, while she's in the store at all times, more than 6 feet. So the option for her really is to get laid off. Am I understanding that correctly?
So if there are no other options for reasonable accommodation, then yeah, that laying off and taking advantage of the current COVID benefits is kind of where you'd be headed. And you said she won't. And again, this is for your medical condition. And a lot of restrictions that people have, again, in the old days before COVID, was you could actually do certain things for 2 hours a day. It wasn't just, no, you can't do it at all. So there might be an option if you have through medical issues, maybe they are able to wear something for part of the day where they can be doing normal work. But again, if that's not an option and they can't social distance and we can't come up with anything else, then the layoff it is kind of where you'd be heading. But again, we're trying to be creative and think of what can we do to keep everybody safe and working. And sometimes there just might not be a feasible option for that.
So Craig, this is Jeff Phillips. I apologize. I muted myself after somebody unmuted me. So sorry for that. I've got an email or a phone message into you. So hopefully we can come, have a conversation after this. But I would just sort of echo what Kevin had to say there, which is we're really struggling to figure out how we would distance people more than 6 feet for any length of time. Trying to find other alternative pathways for these people to continue to be employed. We have made some accommodations for a couple of people who work in our production areas in our deli, for example, to have them come before the store opens, where they would be working with 1 or 2 other people and they could distance themselves. So we're looking for those opportunities, but there aren't a lot. And one of the concerns that I think all of us have as reasonable employers and benevolent employers, by the way, is that we don't want to lay people off. And so we're trying to figure out how we get these masking requirements in line so that we can actually have people do the work that they need to do and stay employed and take care of their families. I'm really interested to hear more about this face shield that has the cloth framework around it. So I've not seen that. I don't know anything about it. So maybe this is going to become an option that would allow people to come back to work under that condition.
I'll talk a bit more about that. And Jeff, I did see, was your message regarding hostile customers when you asked them to wear a mask?
Yep.
Okay, because I think one of our consultation people was going to get a hold of you, but I have some information from the Retail Association on that. So we'll get to that on the customer part.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, our goal is, yeah, we don't want people laid off. We want to keep them working if all possible. The new orders just make that difficult sometimes. You want everyone's safe, and we got to enforce what the order says. That's kind of what we're given the responsibility to do. So if you have creative things that may work, we'd like to hear that, because any ideas, would be nice. But I know some places you just don't have that options because of space and size and just the kind of work. And on the face shields, so again, the idea of the cloth face coverings, and again, if we start talking 6 feet, if you're 6 feet and farther, cloth face covering is really what is needed. If you have a lot of work that comes closer than 6 feet, then a cloth face cover may not be adequate. You may need something slightly better. So that's where, if you're within 6 feet a lot, that may not even be an option at that point, where you might need a surgical mask or a dust mask, something that is a little tighter fitting. But again, the whole idea of the cloth mask, or my wife made me some, so I think a lot of us are making them ourselves. They're no one's approving them. They're just, we want them tight fitting, so if we breathe out, it stops stuff from going in other people's breathing zones or onto surfaces. And so that's the idea behind the face shield, because if you look at our Q&A or FAQ, whatever you want to call it, where we have questions and answers, we have right on there, there's a question: are face shields adequate substitutes for cloth face coverings? And the answer to that question is outright no, because face shields have openings that lets stuff come out around the edges and the bottom. And especially with those more recent science, initially it was thought the disease was mainly spread from larger droplets, but now it's more, there's an aerosolized component that would go right around the edges of a face mask. So the idea of having the cloth coverings around the edge, which really is not anything we normally approve, but heck, we're all making stuff on our own anyhow, would be that then that person, as they're breathing, the face shield will block stuff from the front, and the cloth around the edges and the bottom would block the stuff coming out from those other openings. So again, something that we're talking about, and again, we're just trying to figure out how can we keep people working and keep everyone safe. That's really what we want to do, if at all possible. So, and Jeff, not sure if that really answered your question, but definitely more to come on the face shield of the cloth edges, because Tammy's asked us to look at that and see if it's acceptable. So that is something we're working on now, because if it is acceptable as an option, then that's one more thing that can be used to keep people working.
Yeah. Yeah. So Craig, that's as good as I think we can answer that today, until we figure out if there is this. I just was looking online, and I did see a face shield that actually has a cloth covering that sort of, how do you want to say, grips your face, if you will. And so I'm going to send that off to Tammy. Maybe she can forward on to you so that you can take a look at that. But something like that might be a solution to using face shields.
So
Rebecca, we've got a couple questions.
Same question, two different people. Is a face mask and the plexiglass barrier between the cashier and the customer sufficient? So both.
So to be clear, a face shield and the plexiglass between customers is not sufficient. Okay. A cloth face covering or another kind of face covering, we say mask, the surgical mask. I know down here, I live in Vancouver, by the way, and that the closest Fred Meyer, they now have surgical masks at the front door to offer customers who forget theirs or come in without one. And so that kind of mask that a lot of employees are seen wearing Yeah, that is sufficient, but the barrier and the face shield are not. Because again, that breaks the 6-foot barrier. And so at a minimum, you need the cloth face covering regardless of any kind of barrier. So, yeah, everything
That is a change. So we were told previously by Ellen and I that if they couldn't wear a cloth mask because of medical reasons, they could wear the shield if they had the plexiglass shield. So that is a change in policy direction to us. A significant change.
Yeah, but again, I checked in. I'm having a hard time hearing Jan. I think I got that. And that's one of the things that kind of changed from when it was essential and what's new. How do we protect workers who are working all day? And now it's we got to protect workers in the public, and so that's the why some of this has changed, because it's no longer just looking at keeping essential workers employed. It's keeping everybody safe and wearing masks, and unless you're working alone. And so that was a new thing that had come out in one of the orders, the whole concept of working alone. And that's where some of these things, as far as needing to stay farther apart and having different kind of barriers came in.
So Craig, I'm a store owner. I just want you to understand that from what I gather from everything that's going on, that one single change will mean a significant number of layoffs in this industry, because we have established in the past that the combination of you've got the plexiglass barrier and you have a face shield going allows a cashier to continue to function like that. And again, a cashier isn't somebody that you can move somewhere else. That's what they do.
Yep, and I understand that. That's why we say sometimes there's no other options, and that's why we want to work to figure out what's the what we can do to keep people working. And yeah, and Jan or Tammy, so I'm not exactly sure. I have never seen anything from us that said that was an acceptable thing for reasonable accommodation. So do you actually have that in an email or something?
That ties in with the discussion we had about another mitigating protection. So when we talked about shields, that if we had another protection, another mitigating protection, like plexiglass shield as well as a face shield, that would replace a mask. So it wasn't that it was all specific. It was that if we had two mitigating factors that would replace the one, that employee could continue to work. So that's the direction that we had. And it was specific to face shields because that was the one way we were trying to keep our employees working, was by providing them shields, and then another factor to protect them from the public.
And so if you have that correspondence, because again, there was, maybe some misinformation got out, but again, I haven't found that. So if Jana, you can find that, where we said that, again, things change, doesn't, but it would be good to have that. And so this is where the face shields with the cloth thing around the edge, cloth thing is not a technical term, but if something like that is all that's needed, that would be great. And that's what we're trying to get to. So what I'm giving you so far is the answers as of right now, but we want to work to get to yes again on this stuff, and how we do that could be a bit different.
Yeah, I think the challenge is
Craig,
that
I think
we have employees right now that we need to take care of, and so not having a clear direction means we're going to lay an employee off today, but we might be able to bring them back in a week, and that is a challenge for us.
Yep, and that's why I said until we figure things out, don't do anything on that front. Just do the status quo while we're figuring it out. You're right, it doesn't make any sense to do anything until we get a final answer, because we might be able to keep everyone as is with some slight modifications once we have those discussions with the governor's office and others.
Yeah, that would be my hope.
And I think the other element that came into that entered into it is in the risk factor analysis and everything, it was 6 feet of distance and 10 minutes of time. So for a cashier, the cashier is more than 6 feet away from another employee, and their contact with a customer is certainly not 10 minutes. So those two different mitigating factors was sufficient in that environment. Different than if you had two people standing there for 2 hours together side by side.
And I guess how, this is me talking now, how I would look at that is, one, if you're a store where you have constant customers, that's, you look at the total, not just one at a time. And some stores, again, will have workers, baggers at the end and a cashier. And so they're closer than 6 feet, or the cashier has multiple lines is closer than 6 feet to the customers behind them at the next counter. There's all kinds of little different things to look at.
Okay.
But again, please don't make any changes. We're trying to work on this. And quite honestly, the person with a face shield, a barrier, again, normally in the old days, the personal protective equipment was to protect the person wearing it. And this is to protect the other people. So if they have something in place right now, there's some protection, may not be the ideal, but we don't want any action taken until we can get a final answer. I just want y'all to be prepared that the final answer could be, well, here's what it is, and you can't accommodate, and the layoff is an option. So, but just again, that's a long way to clear up whatever happened last week. That trying to lend somebody off is not something we want, and we'll do anything we can to work around that while keeping everybody safe.
Okay, Craig, can we move on to the customer masking?
Yep, we sure can.
Thank you.
And so some of the documents coming out will have some information on this. And so the first thing of what seems to happen is every time there's an order that comes out, there is talk that there could be a fine and a license could be revoked. So there's some threats in there, and everybody focuses on that. And the social media gets going. Oh my gosh, LI's going to do this. And so first, I just want to tell you that is not the approach. We've been approaching all these orders and stuff as we want to educate first and not do enforcement. So enforcement is an option, and we do want to save that for employers who just aren't making good faith effort. We have limited resources. What we're really looking for on the enforcement side, first off, is if you're making a good faith effort, we don't want to spend time. And I'll tell you what a good faith effort looks like. But if there is no effort, or again, outright disregard for the order, those would be the kind of places we'd be looking to do enforcement action at. And so what currently happens, there is a complaint set up in the Emergency Response Center. And so all customer masking complaints go there first, typically, unless it's an employee complaining, that comes right to us. And since last week, there have been hundreds, probably maybe the thousands of complaints now on customer masking that get triaged there. And some will make their way to us. Some, if it's a restaurant, go to the Liquor Control Board because of they license those. For the beauty salon, might go to Department of Licensing because they license those. But for grocery stores, typically that's going to come to us because that's kind of our responsibility. And before we even get anything, there will typically be a call to the employer, as well as an email or letter correspondence to let everyone know the management that we got a complaint. Please fix this if it's true, and then we'll move on if we get a response. And so again, we take actions informally before we ever want to do any kind of enforcement action, unless again it's the really egregious stuff. And so the customer masking presents a whole new level of challenges. And so what we're looking for in a good faith effort, and again, this is evolving as time goes on because it's fairly new. So first off, again, it's going to depend on your size, the big stores versus small. So one, there needs to be a sign posted that masks are required. That has been in one of the orders or one of the phases here for a while. So we do look for a sign that the masks are required. It might have the medical exemption language on there. a good faith effort if you can do it. And again, some bigger stores they're having someone stationed at the front door to check people. There is no requirement that you have somebody at the front door. And that's a question we get. That is an option. It is not a requirement. And, you do need to have somebody designated as your COVID, we call it a COVID supervisor. It doesn't have to be a quote supervisor, but somebody who is in charge of the program, who will make sure things are going well. And it could be the owner of the store, it could be a manager, it could be an employee, doesn't really matter. We want somebody who's kind of responsible for staying on top of stuff for each location. And again, that was part of phase 1 and 2 reopening, that you had to have a COVID supervisor. And that's for all industries, not just groceries. That was a requirement for everybody. When things first started, we were in charge of seeing if businesses who weren't supposed to be open were open, and that was pretty easy. That's kind of a yes, no. But now with the mask, it's certain people with medical issues who don't have to wear it, and so if we happen upon an establishment, we go in and it looks like 80% of the people are wearing masks, and there's a good program, and the employees are definitely being taken care of. We always look at employees as that's part of good faith. If employees aren't being made to wear masks, then we really can't expect the customers. So we look at all that. And we will want to know, how are you addressing people without a mask? Do you have somebody at the front door? If not, are you checking with them? It's kind of up to each location how you do that. So the one thing I do want to say, because it gets a little bit, I think the language is confused, and hopefully the new governor's document will clear it up a bit. So just because someone is medically exempt from wearing a mask does not mean that you are required to serve them in the traditional fashion. You can offer other kinds of options from curbside, online, but it also does not mean that you are forbidden to serve them. So people who have medical issues are not wearing masks are just fine to be inside your store. Again, some of the new information will come out. You might want to be sure they're social distance a bit farther from people if they're not wearing a mask. But again, sometimes it gets confused because we talk about offering people who can't wear a mask other options. And I think that got construed to say, well, we can't serve people without a mask at all. And that is not true. And Tammy, we are following up with the Spokane Health Department, who allegedly called a member. However, looking at their website, it even says that you're not required to not serve people. So I'm not sure who from the Spokane Health Office, or if it was someone from the Spokane Health Office, called your member. So, and the other thing that this now puts you into a new position that you never really bargained for, and that is, you have people without a medical condition who don't want to wear a mask, who might be hostile. And that is a whole new situation. Like logging back in my computer just to find out something. Screen went away. Sorry about that. And so, again, what we're looking for is a good faith effort. We don't want to put employees or anybody at risk because there is hostility. We're seeing it. We have staff out, and our own staff, we see it all the time, so we know it's there. And so we don't want to have someone trying to have someone wear a mask and wind up with a physical altercation, because that's much more hazardous than one person not wearing a mask. So the Retail Association has some good guidelines on de-escalation about how do you approach people and be nice and don't ask them, don't confront them, and definitely don't physically remove them. And you will see in some of the guidelines, it says if you're not getting cooperation, then you'll follow whatever guidelines you have in place for not serving a customer for any reason. And that's much easier said than done. I understand that. And one thing that had come up, and again, this was on the retail setting, it came up when I spoke with Tammy, you have self-checkouts in many places. And so their question was, well, heck, we have somebody without a mask, and they just come in and they take a couple things to self-check out, just to avoid really, having to be at a register being confronted. And my advice as of last week was, you simply let them check out, because if the questioning, well, we'd have to not serve them and put the stuff back. So my advice is you simply let them check out, and if you have someone staffing the self-checkouts, if you have that option, just give them a friendly reminder that masks are required next time. Please be sure to bring yours, or we can provide one if that's something your location is doing. So let me stop there and see if there's questions or comments or anything along those lines.
So Craig, this is Jeff Phillips from Rosars again. I'm the member in Spokane that was called on Friday and told by our health department that we could not provide service for anyone who was not wearing a mask. So that included people with medical conditions and people who just blew by the door because they were exerting their civil liberties. And so we sent out, based on that, to our stores a new policy that sort of put that into place. And the last 2 days have been absolute hell. And I will tell you that I've never had so many people calling our office or yelling, screaming, spitting at our employees over that very thing. Now, this is the challenge that I have personally, and I think other of our members who are on this call have had the same frustration, which is we are getting so many mixed messages coming out of either the governor's office or LNI or our local health departments, and we don't know who to believe anymore. Right now, I did have a conversation with Bob Lutz, and we've gotten that all straightened around. I think somebody there sort of got a little overzealous in terms of what they told us we were required to do, but they threatened, they told us that we were going to be reported to LNI and that we would be paying a $9,600 fine or whatever if we didn't comply. So, I mean, this is the part that is so frustrating to all of us that are on this call, as we get continual upgrades of misinformation as well as accurate information. It's really tough on us.
And I don't know Bob Lutz, I'm guessing he's with the health department.
Yeah, he's our chief health officer.
And so then it sounds like it was really a Spokane person who called you, because again, there's calls from non-government entities, call all kinds of people with all kinds of information. And yeah, that's again unfortunate that happened. But for enforcement, yes, LNI has given the authority for enforcement on this. And again, it's outside our normal realm. That's for sure. And so you can rest assured we're only looking at this point for the egregious behavior. And yeah, and it's always been if someone with a medical condition, if they can't wear a mask, you can still serve them. The ones, the civil liberties, that's a bit tougher because sometimes those are the ones where you have the more hostile interaction and don't have a lot of sympathy, because again, we're all asked to do this in the scheme of things. It is not a big deal to wear a mask for a short period of time while you're in the store. Something I believe the governor took into consideration when they started allowing reopening, that we can't have our numbers go back up in COVID infections. And this is the one thing we can all do, because again, the real message is if we don't all do something, the numbers go up, we're going to go backwards in our phases, and no one wants that, especially the people frequenting the stores now. And so someone exercising their civil liberties could wind up causing the whole state to go back in the long run if you have enough people doing that and infection rates go back up. Well, we'll try and get that out. This is not just a safety and health issue, it's an economic issue for sure. And we want businesses to stay open. And again, that's where the mask requirement.
So Craig, this is Don Stoltz again. Let me ask you a question then. I mean, is there some way that coming out of either LNI or the governor's office or something, we can have some, poster or something that says the store is not responsible for the enforcement? We're not the enforcers on this, because that's what creates the big conflict. Is you've got some customers that say, hey, I don't have to do this, and then you got other customers that say you're supposed to make sure everybody does this. And so that creates the conflict, even though we all sit here on this call and go, we're not the enforcers. We don't want to be the enforcers. I mean, I had a fist fight in one store last week between two customers because the person came in the door that says exit only, and the other customer got violent. That is nothing compared. Oh, Jeff, I can feel your pain. if you went through that, that is nothing like if I started rejecting people from the store saying, if you don't have a mask, you can't come in here.
So a couple of things. So first, like it or not, you are the enforcers to a certain extent. That's part of what the governor's order says. You're supposed to wear this or you don't serve them. How we do that is, again, we try to work through that to be reasonable. We're the enforcers when it comes down to things just aren't going right and employers aren't doing what they're asked to do. So yeah, we realize you don't want to be the enforcer, but there is a role to play. And again, we know there's hostility out there, and we bring that up routinely. We don't want to have people getting in fist fights if we're not wearing a mask. And again, at least locally in Vancouver, I've been pleasantly surprised by the mask use has gone up. There's a lot of people who've been hostile, but ultimately everyone seems to more or less be doing the right thing. And when I've seen even small stores are requiring masks and people are doing it, they'll nicely talk with them. And again, there is some enforcement role for you. I know you don't like it, but I don't think you have an option to not do it. What we can do, what we want to work to do, is give you information and guidance that is consistent, so everyone's on the same page. And that's really where we want to be, to provide.
Okay, so I'm confused though when you say that. You said earlier that we are not required to, we're not required to refuse service, nor are we required to allow service. So if both of those exist, then we aren't really enforcing these rules. We can have the signs up. I'm providing masks. If somebody says, hey, I forgot my mask, I'm providing masks and all that. But do I have to have the person say to my representative, I have a medical condition? I mean, and again, go back to if they say, no, it's my civil liberties. Is my decision supposed to be different at that point?
Yes, it is. And so when I was sharing that was in regards to the medical issue only. If someone has had a medical issue, according to the order, you're not supposed to serve them if you're not supposed to provide service if they're not wearing a mask. Again, no, it sounds much easier than in reality. And how you do that is up, again, to each employer, what's going to work for them. And again, what we want to avoid is, because we know there's a civil liberty people, and sometimes, the best choice is just to let it go. And once that person, goes, everything's back to normal. So if we showed up, just say, for instance, it was an enforcement action, we showed up and we noticed, and I'd say we as DOSH was enforcement, and most people were wearing a mask, we're probably going to say, okay, that's good. We're not going to necessarily worry about why people weren't. If we show up and see a lot of people don't wear a mask and we're told, well, they said it was their civil liberties and they're not going to wear it and we're not going to enforce anything, and that would be a different discussion, because that would be a violation of the governor's order. So it's all in degree, and again, we're trying to work this out as we go through. And I know it's frustrating not to have solid answers on some of these things that are so new to everybody.
Okay,
Hey, Craig, this is Jeff Phillips again. I'm sorry, can I just get this last question in? So within the governor's order, there is a section in there that talks about not putting employees in harm's way, that we need to do our best effort to educate people, to provide them these particular options if they aren't going to wear a mask. But if they refuse, for us to put our employees in harm's way, and that's exactly what was going on up until about an hour ago when we rescinded what we had put out there on Friday. We can't afford our people to be put in harm's way and to have altercations in the stores, making a scene in front of customers. It's crazy. So what I was told by Bob was that we're going to do our best job. We have somebody at the door. We're going to inform them, customers who are not wearing a mask, do you know that there's an order by the governor that you have to have a mask to be served? If they say, go to hell, I'm not wearing a mask, guess what? They're going inside and they're going to get checked out, because I'm not going to have a scene at the front end and have a big altercation. And that's what we just had in Yakima about maybe an hour ago. And so the other thing is on this, medical exception thing. We are asking people, to wear a mask, and if they say I have a medical condition, we are saying we have other options for you if you'd like. We have online delivery, shopping, curbside pickup, all that kind of stuff. If they say, I'm sorry, none of those work for me, we're still letting them in. And we're getting about 95 to 99% compliance with people wearing masks in our stores. And so I guess at what point is it good enough? If we're doing all of those things, isn't it good enough?
Yep. So the second option is just fine. There's no problem at all with that because that's allowed. The first option, with the civil liberties kind of thing, there's no allowance for that in the order, but we know there's that going on out there. And again, we deal with it with our own staff because we're out there enforcing this, so we get it all the time. And so we have to be aware of that too for our own employee safety. And so, yeah, we don't want anyone put in harm's way. And so, if you let someone in and there's a complaint, because people are filing complaints, those hundreds of complaints are about things just like this. Other people are wearing it, well, the store let them in, and the person outright said they have a medical condition, I heard it. And we look at that and say there's more potential harm to trying to stop that than just letting that go. That's why we look for a good faith effort. What are you doing? It sounds like what you're doing is definitely going to be good enough. And what I'd strongly recommend, I think you're already doing it, because a lot of these orders come out and are put out, and then we have experience with them. And back through Tammy and Jan, I think if they get back to the governor's office, here's the experience, here's what we need to consider, how could we maybe modify this to take into account what's happening in the real world. I think that's a good thing to be doing because, again, these things definitely change as we see. And feedback from the industry definitely helps shape the next version of what we see.
And that's why it's really important for all of you that as incidences arise, that you give us a brief summary of what the incident was and how you handled it and the reaction. And send those to Tammy so we're getting those all in one place because the governor's office and Illinois and Department of Health are listening every day. And so the more examples we can give them, the better off that we are. A couple things, Craig, I wanted to mention. One of our members, Chris Davis, put in more of a statement, but in the question box saying not all retailers have deep staff pools to draw from, and many are 10 or fewer staff members. And laying off one or two is laying off 10 to 20% of your staffing. And we have a lot of our small rural grocery stores and convenience stores. So, but the other comment I wanted to make is comparing us to the Retail Association is night and day because their stores were closed for several months. Our stores have been open every day from day one, and we kind of found our own way the first couple months. People come in, they buy what they need, and they scoot out. They don't linger around the aisles and do non-essential shopping. So customers have been coming into our grocery stores from day one and have been working with our stores as we've been trying to figure out the best way to do that to protect them and our employees. These retail stores are just now opening, and it's a totally different expectations. I just want to raise that thought also that you keep in the back of your mind, so the reactions may be much stronger from our stores because it's a dramatic change to the customers and their essential products, and these people need to come into our stores. So looks like a couple more questions popped in here pretty quickly. So Rebecca, let's see. Are they unmuted or do they want us to read it?
Well, most people are unmuted, so if they typed them in, they might not have a microphone. Let's see.
Okay.
The state needs to make it clear to the public that people can be served if they have a medical condition. And then just to be clear, could you confirm that we cannot allow people with medical exemptions to shop in our store without a mask? So clearly there's some confusion there.
Yep. So, yep, first, Jan, I want to follow up real quick. I understand the food industry definitely different than retail. And where you have some similar struggles is on the reasonable accommodation and the talking to customers about masks. So that's kind of the comparison there, because you're both have some challenges there, but I definitely understand the essential for, since the beginning versus retail, a lot of that just opening up. So yeah, on the making it clear that it's okay to serve people with medical condition, I'm hoping on what the updated document that's being worked on that will be public, hopefully soon, that will be clear, because there's definitely no prohibition against serving people with a medical condition. And if they just simply say they have one, that's all you need. There's no other questions needed. And I think the question was really the same thing, unless I missed it. So
No, it is. Yeah. So Craig, once there is new written direction, are you willing to come back on to the next webinar that we have and clearly explain that? And hopefully Elena in the governor's office is going to give us just a little time to implement new rules.
Yep, I'm willing to come back as often as needed to help. I know right now it's hard, some of this to understand is a bit vague, so hopefully when you say clearly explain, you'll have some more information that will help a clear explanation. And again, on the incidents, I did want to mention, so we, as an employee safety organization, we actually, when we saw some of these the orders, we had a chance to see them ahead of time. So we had concern about the hostile work environment this creates. And so it's one thing for us as reviewers of a document to simply say, hey, here's what you can expect, versus letting Jan know about the true incidents. Because now it's not just us, guessing this is going to happen. Like, hey, it really is happening. And so we definitely need to know that so we can address it. Again, we suspected and shared this as a possible result for this approach.
Okay, thanks so very much, Craig. And I know everybody's agitated. It's a difficult time for everybody on all sides. So we really appreciate it, and I appreciate that Tammy has been working so closely with you and keeping our communications lines open. So appreciate you joining us very much today.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Craig.
Okay, and we had a couple questions here about what did the governor do on his press conference at 2:30. He just paused reopenings, any new reopenings until at least the end of July. So that was really the emphasis there. The couple quickie things, and I do want y'all on your computer to answer a couple questions if you could. We're getting really some disturbing information on unemployment insurance benefits, and I want you to all be well aware and tell your HR folks or whoever's doing your HR UI stuff. The employment, let's go ahead and mute yourself if you're not talking. The Employment Security Department is going to be sending out a statement of benefit charges for the second quarter of 2020. And those are getting mailed sometime in the next few days, as we understand that. And you need to make sure your HR people are responding to those. If those benefit charges are fraudulent, or if they are COVID related. So because COVID related are non-charged benefits, and obviously fraudulent too. So please make sure that your HR people are on top of that. Now, the disturbing part of all of it is there was only $25 million allocated by the legislature to offset COVID claims, and we all know it's far exceeded that. So Employment Security Department told us today that they will apply those proportionately. So say 25 million covers 10% of those. Everybody that files that says it was a COVID claim will get 10% off of their experience rating charge, but the rest will go to your UI. Our trust fund is draining rapidly. The commissioner expects it to be drained in the near future. There are going to be huge changes coming with unemployment insurance, and proud to say that our association, under the leadership of Tammy Hattrick, is leading a broad-based business group who is in direct communications with employment security and working on possible legislative options. And Carolyn Logue, who is our contract lobbyist, has been deeply involved in she worked with me way back when we rewrote the whole UI system. The grocery industry was the lead on that then, back in the mid-90s. So huge issue, huge tax increase coming our way on unemployment insurance. And I said, when are you sending the tax notices out? He said, well, if we're lucky by the middle of December. And I said, for January 1 taxes? He goes, yeah, but you only pay them quarterly, so it'll be 90 days later. I said, what about budgets? You know? So anyway, so my first question to you, and we're putting the question up for you to answer on the webinar, is as I talked to ESD today, they asked if we would want them to come in and they've been doing with a number of business groups, unemployment insurance 101, so you understand how those taxes get structured, how you can find out or get a sense of how you're going to be impacted as we move through all of this. And so I need to know if you would mark on there, would you be interested in a 30-minute UI Taxes 101 webinar? Please answer that. I don't want to waste your time if you just want us to do what we do and leave you alone. The second question, as you heard, as Craig talked in Jeff and Don and some of the others, is we are starting to get some customer backlash, and I'm concerned also if they're changing rules on employees. Would you like us to do a basic webinar on workplace violence and how to maybe de-escalate, how to talk to customers to help de-escalate? So those are two things that we see possibly upcoming. If there's an interest, if you'll answer that. And if you have any other suggestions for anything that we can do for you, our staff is looking for ways to help you go through this. Please send us your recommendations and we'll try to put together some webinar and training materials. So that's all I have. If there's any last minute comments, looks like they are interested in workplace violence. Do we know, how about the UI, Rebecca? The 101? Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, he offered to be with us next Tuesday, so that will be on our agenda next Tuesday then, UI 101.
Hey, Jan. Can you hear me?
I don't think she realizes we've lost her.
Oh, okay.
We can hear you though.
I can
Okay.
still hear her talking in there, so.
Oh, shoot. I got a jet going over right now. Sorry. It's really loud.
Just close. Oh, I guess I'm back now. Well, I just asked for last minute comments, but gonna go ahead and sign off unless there's a comment or question.
Hey, Jan, this is Jeff Phillips. I'm sorry. I did send to you and Tammy both the document. It's called Overview of Mask Order of July 7th, where it specifically calls out that we do not have to put our employees in harm's way, which totally goes against what he said about not serving these civil liberties folks who blow by the door.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Saved us searching it out.
Yep.
Yeah,
Thanks.
Jan, I would add one, I just add one comment to that, is that I just today spent like an hour with people in one of the stores because of this huge blow up on masks and everything. And the one comment I made to them, I said, I'll do anything in this company personally. I know how to do every job here. I would not personally want to be that person at the front door. I just would not do it. It's too risky.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. Yes,
I
it is.
totally agree with you, and I'm not going to be doing it either.
No, I've made that very clear to them. They know. I've told the governor's office and LNI that that's just not even a safe situation for employees.
So
Hey, don't be talking
that-
about hazard pay here.
So
Well,
Allie has
Elvira?
something that she
Yeah.
wants.
Okay, Elvira, I want to answer Elvira's question. Just keep operating the way you are till we get new written instructions. So
That's exactly what I was thinking. I'm like, listen,
okay.
dude,
Yeah.
I'm not listening
I
to
just
you. I
had
don't
something
care.
that
No.
has been working for me. In Point Roberts, there has not been a single case of COVID, but it's not my employees that are harassing the medical exempt, it's the other customers. So we created a tent card that we hand to those customers. They put it on the edge of their cart. It says medical mask exemption. And then they also put it at the end of the belt when they put their groceries up. So the person behind them will just leave them alone. So it's on the front of their cart, and then it's at the end of the belt. And this week it's been a lot better. Last week was horrible. It was other customers, not my employees, that were harassing customers, and we're the only one up there, so they've got nowhere else to go. So we're trying to make it easier for them, but that has helped a lot. So
Awesome, Ellie. Hey, take a picture of the cart and the counter, would you, and send us, and we'll put it up on the website with your recommendation. That's
Sure.
awesome. Yeah.
Hey, Ellie, did you check to see if that's legal? I
it is because if I go to the person at the door says, you don't have a mask, are you medically exempt? And they say yes, they say, here, please put this on your cart so nobody bothers you. And we don't have to, if they say yes, that's it. That's all I have to do. I can serve
so by calling those people out in your store, that's not a problem?
No, well, they're called out anyway by not wearing a mask, right?
That's true.
I mean, I had one person say, I don't want people to know. I said, well, they know because you're not wearing a mask. So this way they'll at least leave you alone, and not, because I had a guy, he came in, the person at the door, he got to the deli, the person in the deli, he got to the meat guys, and and then 3 other customers. Why aren't you wearing a mask? Well, now that he puts this card on his cart every time, everybody leaves him alone.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Excellent. We need more great ideas like that. Send them in, you guys. Okay. Well, good webinar, good confusing webinar once again. And we apologize, but we just bring you the information from the state. So do the best job we can. Nothing big from the governor's conference, press conference today, other than slowing down any reopenings till at least the end of the month. No other proclamations or anything today. So thank you all for being here, and we'll get you a UI 101 webinar set up for next week, and hopefully Craig will be back with some written explanation. Thank you very much.